Welcome to the Strategic Management Accounting course, where we teach the value-adding steps and processes necessary to execute strategy. Whether you are just starting up or looking to grow your business, then this course is for you. With your host, Dr. Neil O'Connor.
Welcome back. Yes, it's Neil here, and we're looking at job costing. And this is basically a primer for strategic management accounting. Strategic management accounting, as I said right at the start, you can't just look at the top line, you need to control your bottom line. And how do you control your bottom line? Looking at top line, but also managing the costs. Better management of costs can help improve the margins and at the very minimum help sustain operations, no matter you have a service business or you have a manufacturing business. Job costing, process costing, cost management is so important to overall strategic management. While we won't be focusing on cost management throughout the whole course, you do need to have a primer on cost management. And in the first part one, job costing, I introduced some terms to you. I also explained to you how it does fit in, some examples of how job costing is useful for helping making more accurate decisions. So in this part, I just want to take you through a quick example that is set out in chapter 4 of the Horngren 15th edition Cost Counting Managerial Emphasis, Horngren et al. Here's our exercise. It's Sinjin Coco Furniture Company Limited. They make chairs, as you can see here. Yes, red chairs, yellow chairs, black chairs. They got the lot. Obviously, there are different types of chairs they're making. There's some fabric ones, there's some foam ones, and there's some plastic ones. There you go. So let's have a look at how we can understand how job costing or the way we allocate costs can help us make better decisions. So here we have two different types of materials. That is the decision point in this example. And the engineers have been working with combining new and recycled plastic, requiring to manufacture the batch of 100 chairs. So for example, we have 10 different combinations of new and recycled plastic. As you can see, we start at the top one. We have a combination that requires 20 pounds of new plastic and 72 pounds of recycled plastic, where we go all the way down to combination 10 that has 72 pounds of new plastic and 20 pounds of recycled plastic. As you can see, pound for pound, they are exchangeable. But here's the difference. The costs are different. And as you'll find out later, perhaps the overhead, the indirect costs are different depending on which combination we're using. So let's just start with the direct costs for now. As you can see, new plastic is cheaper or more expensive than recycled plastic. As you can see, it is, let's see, 36 to 40. You can see that new plastic is actually more expensive than recycled plastic. As you can see, if we get 40 pounds of new plastic, we have $640 that is required. If we have 40 pounds of recycled plastic, you can see there's $400 required. So from a pure direct cost allocation point, before we do even more calculation, which plastic would you make your chair from if you want to make the lowest cost chair possible? Of course, you know the answer. You would work with recycled plastic. Yes. Okay, but that's not the decision point at the moment. The decision point is we've got to combine some of new with some of recycled, and you have 10 different choices. So let's get to the good stuff, shall we? Here's the sum of the combination, and as you can see, we want to minimize. If the decision point is to minimize the total costs of manufacturing a batch of 100 chairs, then which combination would we use? We would actually use the one that makes the combination of $960, where that will be number 3, 30 pounds of new plastic, 48 pounds of recycled plastic. There you go. Pretty easy, isn't it? But we're not finished yet. This is just a decision point or guidance based on allocation of direct costs only. We need to think a little bit further than this. As you can see, we can plot this and we can see the minimum costs go down for a combination number 3 or 4. As we worked out, it was number 3. It was $2 cheaper than combination number 4. Yes. Anyway, it's nicer to have some more recycled plastic than it is with new plastic, so therefore it might be better to go with number 3. You know that, don't you? All right, but we know number 3 is cheaper economically, so let's go with that combination. But there's more. We need to think about overhead allocations. Let's have a look at allocating overhead, which is very important. When we talk about allocating overhead, we're actually talking about the allocation of indirect costs. So there could be indirect labor and it could be indirect overhead, and they come combined together make overhead. And so here we have the combination. First of all, we have our combinations of new plastic in the first 2 columns. The second 2 columns, we've got the combination. They've got the pound and the costs of the recycled plastic. Then we have the sum of the combination. Then we have the overhead, and now we have the sum of the combination after overhead. Now we're adding overhead into thick, and we might find that the sum of the combination after the overhead means that we have a different combination than if we do not consider overhead. Why would that be the case? Well, let's have a look at combination from 1 down to 10 for the overhead that's allocated. Notice overhead allocation, if we have combination of 20 new pounds of plastic, 72 pounds of recycled plastic, notice the overhead is very, very high. Maybe because we have to spend more time to process the recycled plastic. Maybe there's things we have to clean. Maybe it's harder to work with. Maybe there's more scrap when we're working with recycled plastic. For these reasons, overhead seems to be higher. If we go down to combination 10, where we're using more new plastic and very little recycled plastic, notice the overhead goes down to 600. Very interesting, isn't it? Maybe because new plastic is easy to work with. There's less rejects. There's less cleaning involved. And so you probably think, maybe we should choose number 10. But we're not finished there. We need to actually combine the combination of the material prices of new and recycled plastic plus the overhead to find a total. And now we look at the total. Now we can see that the minimum is now combination 9. What does 9 give you? It gives you $1,920 in total costs. Very interesting, isn't it? So when we don't consider overhead, the decision is that we use combination 3. When we combined overhead, now we're going to use a combination that uses more new plastic. As you can see, if the decision point is to minimize total costs, that is the sum of the combination plus overhead, then you're going to work with combination 9. So what we want to show you here is that when we combine overhead, the indirect costs, and allocate it properly to the different decision options, that is combinations of new plastic, recycled plastic, we get a different decision. So that information has value. At the end of the day, when you're doing cost allocation, we need to know what is our decision point, what information do we want, is that information, that information include everything we need to include? Is it reasonably accurate to give us the benefits of a more accurate decision? And in this case, we're going to choose combination 9 because we're now accounting for overhead. That's the difference that allocation of indirect costs makes. As you'll see when we go into chapter 5 and actually look at activity-based costing, we go one step further to work out, well, hang on, activity-based costing gives us more accurate information than just allocation of indirect costs or basic overhead using one allocation base like we did in this example. We can go one step further Now, at the end of the day, it all gets down to the costs and the benefits of the information for the decision you're making. So, as we try and get more accurate information for good decisions, the incremental benefit of that accuracy of the information goes down. We can't make better decisions. Maybe we have a finer adjustment of the allocation of overhead here, but that may not change our decision by using combination 9. Or maybe it changes our decision to use a combination of 8 or combination number 10. Maybe that's not a big point, you see? So therefore, we may not need new information or a more sophisticated costing system to actually change our decision here. And that's what we cover in chapter 5, where we actually look at the costs and benefits of how sophisticated the costing system should be against the marginal benefits of increasing the sophistication of the information provided by the costing system. So more about that in chapter 5. The big thing here was just to show you how cost allocation can change the decision you are making. Catch you in the next video. Cheers.